Welcome back to Tanya in 5. Today, we recap letter 23 of book 4 of Tanya, Iggeret HaKodesh. In this letter, the Alter Rebbe appeals to his followers, to his Hasidim, to fellow Jews, not to, God forbid, waste time with idle chatter between Mincha and Ma'ariv, between the afternoon and evening prayer in shul, in synagogue. And he begins by explaining the virtue of a minyan, a group of 10 Jews together, and especially when they're studying Torah. He quotes a number of teachings from our sages, explains them in the light of Chassidus, and what emerges is as follows. Anytime someone learns Torah, there's a sense of reward. God rewards the study. And reward, explains the Alter Rebbe, is something like this. We get to appreciate, enjoy, take delight in the divine energy of the Torah we learned. This is true in the world to come, where we get to appreciate the divine energy invested in that which we learned, in the Torah we learned. But it's true also in this world. When we connect to God through prayer, we can feel a connection and we can enjoy the sweetness and delight of what it means to connect to God during prayer as a reward for our Torah study. The divine energy we connected to through our Torah study is that which we can appreciate during our prayer. That's what allows us to appreciate godliness in our prayer. When 10 people sit together, even if they aren't learning, but when 10 Jews sit together, even if they aren't studying Torah, they're just there together, that in and of itself invokes what he calls Hashra'as Hashchina, which means the fact that the divine presence is here. The divine presence being here is beyond what's capable of being understood or appreciated as reward is. It's a transcendent level. It's beyond anything, to the point that we cannot even appreciate it so long as our souls are in bodies. Only when our soul leaves the body in life after death, then we can appreciate some of the divine energy we've elicited when we sat together with our fellow Jews in a minyan. And even then, when we appreciate it in the afterlife, it's only because God is so kind to allow us to appreciate a little bit of it. But in essence, this divine energy elicited when there's 10 Jews sitting together is transcendent and beyond anything that could be appreciated. To illustrate the point, the Alter Rebbe quotes that which he has heard from in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, that if one angel were to be in the presence of 10 Jews, that angel would be burnt up, because that angel would be aware of the divine energy that's there, and the divine energy is so transcendent that the angel would lose itself and burn up. So, turns the Alter Rebbe to his followers. When you come to shul for Mincha Ma'ariv, for the evening prayers and for the afternoon prayers, and during the break between the two services, you walk around and chat. How can you do that? The presence of God is here. Divine transcendence is here. How insulting it is that instead of studying God's Torah, you do your own thing? It's insulting. It's disrespectful to the presence of God that's here to walk around and idle chatter. So says the Alter Rebbe, he lays out the following study program for synagogues between the afternoon and evening prayer. Every weekday, they should study a book called the Ein Yaakov. The Ein Yaakov is a book that collects all the Agadic parts of the Talmud. That is, not the parts of the Talmud that discuss Jewish law, but rather the parts of the Talmud that are inspirational, that have stories, that have metaphorical messages, things of that nature. And he explains how embedded in those sections of the Talmud are the deepest secrets of Torah, and they provide inspiration, they provide guidance, they provide moral ethics. And, he adds, they actually atone for sins studying those sections of the Talmud. So every day between Mincha and Ma'ariv, study those. Likewise, study sections of the Code of Jewish Law that have practical relevance to day-to-day life. On Shabbos, between Mincha and Ma'ariv, he says, study the laws of Shabbos. Keeping Shabbos is very detailed, very nuanced, very difficult, and one can easily transgress Shabbos if one doesn't know. And therefore, we should be studying the laws of Shabbos on Shabbos. And he concludes with a very stern warning against those who will separate themselves from the community while the community is learning. Certainly not to leave the room, But even if you're sitting in the room but learning something else, as opposed to learning what everybody else is learning, the Alter Rebbe has very strong words for that. Tifresh min hatzibur, one who separates himself from the community. The takeaway from all of this is, we must appreciate what it means to be members of a community. Being members of a community is not simply, it's nice, I gain things, I have friends, I have a social life, and so on. But the community is actually one of the ways in which we interface with God. And therefore, each person should see it his individual responsibility, that when he is with the community, he contribute to the godliness of that community, and not, God forbid, the reverse. Make sure he's taking part in the study programs the community has to offer. And in that way, he can truly receive God's presence in a proper way. Looking forward to seeing you when we conclude Letter 24.